Hello and welcome to our live coverage of the launch of a Northrop Grumman Cygnus CRS. This is a cargo module that will be on its way to the International Space Station, departing from Wallops, which is a base just north of Washington, D.C., which means any of you out on the East Coast should be prepared to run outside and have a look. So I am working on following everything in all the places, and I hope that you are ready to follow along with me. Now I am going to check if we have audio coming in from NASA TV. Okay, I have the audio, you don't have the audio. So let me work on getting you the audio. These are the things that lead to so much confusion sometimes. Okay. So welcome. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Pamela Gay, and I am your host for today. We will be bringing you all sorts of, cool coverage today, I hope. And now we have audio as well. Okay, I feel much better knowing that we have audio. So for those of you who haven't been to CosmoQuest before, we are your place to learn and do science. We bring you a daily news show every Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. That is 10 a.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. London time. And we do a quick rundown of all that is new in space and astronomy and what spacecraft launches you have to look forward to. On Sundays, we have Sunday Science Hour. It and our Wednesday streams are brought to you by Annie Wilson. And we also work to bring you science in the moment and space as it happens. This is why we are here right now, watching the NASA website, which should be switching over any second to live launch coverage. I am going to work on trying to figure out what exactly I should be following on Twitter so that I can get you better information. They have already fueled the rocket. Here we go.
This is Mission Control Houston. Good afternoon. Today is April 17th, 2019. You are looking at a live view of the Northrop Grumman Cygnus vehicle on top of an Antares rocket out at the Wallops Flight Facility, ready to launch here in just about a half an hour. Cygnus is poised on top of the Antares 230 rocket out at the Virginia Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport Pad 0A at Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. We're here in Mission Control Houston monitoring the International Space Station, the ultimate destination of the Cygnus vehicle launching on top of the Antares rocket here today. This is a live view of the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Flight director here in the room is Brian Smith for the Orbit 2 team. Next to him is Andreas Mogensen, the Capcom, who has been communicating with the crew aboard the International Space Station throughout the middle of today. Here in the room, we'll have some visiting vehicle officers. You can see on the right, Dory Tomiko, next to Jessica Doy. The duo will be working with flight controllers, the Northrop Grumman flight controllers over in Dulles, Virginia. This is a view out of the Wallops Launch Control Center next to the launch pad at Wallops Flight Facility. Controllers here are watching over today's launch scheduled for just under 30 minutes. Over at the Northrop Grumman Mission Control Center, Mission Director Ken Peake is leading the teams there. The teams you are seeing in this room will be leading the Cygnus throughout its flight from launching here in just under a half an hour through its journey to the International Space Station over the course of a day and a half. Everything is looking good so far for a launch on time at 3:46 p.m. Central Time, just under 29 minutes from now. At the time of launch, the International Space Station is scheduled to be over the Atlantic Ocean, just northeast of the Lesser Antilles. We're looking at a 4-minute, 59-second launch window from the time of launch, the exact time of launch being 3:46 and 7 seconds p.m. Central Time. The weather today is at 100% favorability, looking at about 54 degrees Fahrenheit at the time, just over 12 degrees centigrade. Again, 100% favorability, clear skies for the launch coming up here in just about 28 minutes. Again, the ultimate destination of the Cygnus cargo craft over the course of its day-and-a-half journey to the International Space Station. Welcoming the vehicle will be the crew of Expedition 59. On board the International Space Station is, from left to right, David St. Jacques of the Canadian Space Agency, Anne McClain of NASA, Oleg Kononenko, the commander of Expedition 59 of Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexei Ovchinin. To his right are NASA astronauts Nick Hague and Christina Cook. Anne McClain will be the one capturing the Cygnus vehicle in just about a day and a half as the prime robotics operator. She'll be backed up by David St. Jacques of the Canadian Space Agency, Nick Hague standing by to monitor telemetry during the approach of the Cygnus vehicle to the International Space Station. On top of the Antares rocket, you can see the fairing. Underneath the fairing is the Cygnus cargo vehicle, loaded with about 7,600 pounds of cargo. To date, that is the largest load that was flown, a Cygnus vehicle to be flown on an Antares rocket. You can see the breakdown here. Just about half of that are scientific investigations, many of which will be loaded onto the International Space Station, some of which were part of a late load procedure, which we'll go over during today's broadcast. Back at the pad, you can see a bit of ducting. This is conditioned air that's being fed to the payload bay and to the first stage at the bottom of the vehicle. Plenty of food and supplies and scientific experiments aboard the Cygnus vehicle. Some of the food includes many items like smoked turkey, pork chops, shrimp cocktail, mashed potatoes, candied yams. The list goes on.
I'm always amused at what they choose to share. Candied yams was not on the list of things I expected them to share.
Again, some of the conditioned air billowing from the Antares vehicle. This air is being fed to the payload bay at the top where the Cygnus vehicle is housed, and of course the first stage at the bottom. There's going to be a series of milestones. First, a go, no go conducted here in Mission Control Houston. At this time, the Antares has already been loaded, the two liquid fuel engines with liquid oxygen and R21 kerosene. At the T-minus 30 mark, began the final checks of the flight termination systems, already underway. At 22 seconds before launch, you will see the transporter erector launcher will retract from the vehicle. That's that sort of scaffolding you're seeing in this view of the launch vehicle out at Pad 0A at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport.
Mid-Atlantic means you can see it from Washington, D.C.
After this tower pulls back, it'll be another 10 minutes until a go-no-go poll is conducted from Mission Control Center at Dulles. The Northrop Grumman flight controllers will conduct a go-no-go for the final steps to commence launch. Again, that launch 3:46 p.m. Central Time today. At T-minus 5, the vehicle will switch to internal power before 3 minutes and 30 seconds before launch, which will initiate auto-sequence handoff for terminal countdown. Essentially, this will mark the time where the computers take over for the final steps up through the launch at T-minus 0. At about T-minus 40, as part of this automatic sequence, the takes will be pressurized until, and this is the one of the major final steps until T-minus 0 liftoff. Again, 3:46 p.m. and 7 seconds p.m. Central Time today. After liftoff, that first stage will burn for 3 minutes 35 seconds until main engine cutoff. You'll hear performance calls from Northrop Grumman flight controllers marking the status of the vehicle and the rocket throughout its journey. After main engine cutoff, we'll await stage 1 separation. The second stage and the rest of the vehicle will coast for a bit before the fairing separation occurs to reveal the Cygnus underneath, and the inner stage at the back of this configuration of the vehicle will separate, the inner stage being an adapter that connects the first and second stages. After this short coasting period, we'll be staged to ignition. This second stage burns for 2 minutes and 30 seconds and is a solid rocket motor, meaning the whole thing will burn. During the 2 minutes and 30 seconds, the vehicle will climb about 40 miles before the engine is exhausted over that 2 minutes and 30-second burn. After the second stage burnout, the vehicle will coast for 2 minutes before the Cygnus separation occurs just after the 9-minute mark into flight, and the vehicle is inserted into orbit. We'll stand by for just over 2 hours, where there'll be a series of burns before the solar arrays are deployed. We'll be back on for that coverage at 6 p.m. Central Time. Solar array deploy occurs over just about half an hour. After that, there's a series of milestones, including some burrs over the next day and a half until the ultimate rendezvous of the Cygnus cargo vehicle on its CRS-11 mission to the International Space Station on Friday, April 19th, for a capture scheduled at 4:30 Central Time. It's a busy time in spaceflight. This mission will be followed shortly, just over a week from Friday, or just about a week from Friday, of the SpaceX Dragon on a CRS-17 mission. That's April 26th, and it'll stay in orbit for 1 month. The Cygnus will conclude its mission to the International Space Station in July, separating with thousands of pounds of trash from the station, and then begin a solo long-duration mission in space.
I keep waiting for a long enough break in what he's saying to say something meaningful, and I think we may finally have it. So this particular Cygnus launch is testing a late load capacity, during which they actually upload some of the cargo that they're taking to the International Space Station only 24 hours before launch instead of the normal, well, more than 24 hours that goes into making sure that they have everything well packed and well tested. Now, this late 24-hour load in allows them to take 40 mice to the International Space Station. I adore mice. I hate their stink. I hope they're well ventilated, or at least on their own air supply. So this is one of the first times, this is actually not one of, this is the first time they have been able to do this with a Cygnus. They have in the past been able to do this kind of a mission with late load in only on the Dragon capsule. The way they describe this...
At this time, the transporter erector, this is that scaffolding you see to the left of the vehicle, has been armed. we should shortly see that transporter erector start to back away just here in a few minutes.
So I deeply appreciate just how close to the water they are with this launch. It does lead to some beautiful views. You, of course, see the lightning rods.
The T-minus 22, the arming transporter erector has been armed. It'll take some time before it retracts, actually shortly before the time of launch. Every Cygnus vehicle is named after a major contributor in the world of spaceflight. All of the folks that it's named after have passed. This vehicle, the Northrop Grumman, on its commercial resupply mission 11, is named the SS Roger Chaffee. Roger Chaffee was born February 15, 1935 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He got his private pilot's license through the Naval Reserve Officers Training Corps before graduating from Purdue in 1957 with a bachelor's in aeronautical engineering. After graduation, he flew for the Navy and accumulated over 1,800 flight hours before his selection as an astronaut for the Apollo program in 1963. He began his training as an astronaut in 1964, and during his time of training served as a cabcom in mission control during the Gemini program. He received an assignment to fly on the first flight of Apollo in January 1966. On January 27, 1967, Chaffee, along with Virgil, Gus Grissom, and Ed White, perished in a fire that ignited during a plugs-out test of the Apollo command module out at the Kennedy Space Center. Chaffee's sacrifice began redesigns of the Apollo vehicles that ultimately landed Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon nearly 50 years ago on July 20, 1969.
So with this particular...
The Apollo program being 50 years ago, just about a month from now, in the middle of May, will be the 50th anniversary of the launch of the Apollo 10 mission. And of course, the landing of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon will, this year, in 2019, will be the 50th anniversary of the landing on the moon.
With this new Cygnus program, they are going to be docking to the International Space Station on April 19th. This, unlike with the Dragon capsule...
Everything's still on track for an on-time launch at 3:46 p.m. Central Time today, just about 17 minutes away from that time. Everything looking good. Dulles flight controllers tracking the vehicle and reporting good milestones as we count down to the final time of liftoff. Joining me in Mission Control today is Robin Hurd, the Deputy Program Manager for Launch Vehicles out at Northrop Grumman. Robin, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me today. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm curious to hear more about the Antares vehicle. Now this is the Antares 230 vehicle. There's a little bit of modifications that happen for this late load capability. Tell us about the vehicle. What is the vehicle that's actually launching Cygnus today?
Absolutely. So NG-11 is the mission that will fulfill our contract to NASA under the CRS-1, or the first phase of our commercial resupply services contract with NASA. So our next mission will be CRS-2, and for that we'll be flying a vehicle configuration that we call 230 plus, but what we have here today is a little bit of a hybrid. It's a bit of an upgrade from the 230, just so that we can provide a little more performance. And one of the things that it has available to it is what we call a pop-top fairing. So it allows us to perform a load of cargo later in the flow than we normally would, and actually is able to be performed at the launch pad now.
So tell me about the construction of Antares. About the time do you actually get the call to design an Antares, know when the launch is, and begin the process to start getting ready for an on-time launch?
Sure. So, if you want to go all the way back to the component level, the process of building an Antares actually starts years before we launch. But in terms of integration, a flow would take typically 6 to 9 months from the time that we gather up all of the different assemblies and bring them into our horizontal integration facility at Wallops Island and start pulling them together into something that you could actually identify as a rocket.
Now, you said this was a little bit of a different configuration. Tell me about the late load process. What was different about this particular launch?
Sure. So one of the unique features of this launch is the cargo late load. So we have built some new electrical and mechanical ground support equipment that allows us to actually take the vehicle from the configuration you see here, where it's vertical at the pad. It can actually convert down back into the horizontal position. We're able to drive what we call a mobile clean room right up to the tip of the fairing so that we can load time-sensitive research and other perishable items that NASA needs to provide within 24 hours of launch.
And that's a pretty tight turnaround, but there's a critical science that's actually being loaded into Cygnus to accommodate this. One of them is the Rodent Research 12 mission. That'll be arriving at the station, and then, of course, be one of the first actually experiments to come out of Cygnus once it arrives. Now, we have some photos of rollout here. Tell me about the rollout process. Once it's ready to go, what does that look like?
Yeah, so that looks like just a beautiful evening at the Eastern Shore there for rollout. So you can see that we have some tarps over the top of the fairing there. That just helps keep everything environmentally protected. We've got the transporter erector launcher there that's being used to roll the vehicle from about a mile from our horizontal integration facility out to the pad. That's a slow process. It goes probably about a mile per hour. It's a pretty slow walk for the folks that accompany it out to the pad. And there's another beautiful shot with the big NASA meatball on the water tower there.
Now, of course, here it is, a live view, again, billing some of that conditioned air. We're now tracking just about 13 minutes from launch. Everything looking good. As you can tell, this is an afternoon launch, a beautiful day, clear skies, just about 54 degrees Fahrenheit, and everything's on track, and we've been counting down these milestones to an on-time launch so far.
So this particular launch,
Now, one of the next milestones that we're looking forward to is a go, no-go poll from Northrop Grumman flight controllers over at Dulles. What are they looking for? What are the things that they're checking from the operations side?
So they're going to be polling folks like our Antares chief engineer, all of the safety officers, and some of the key engineering leads. And those folks are going to be looking at their telemetry data, making sure that the health and the status of the vehicle is all within constraints and that we are ready to go into the final stages of launch today.
Now, of course, after launch, it'll lift off and rendezvous with the station in just over a day and a half. It'll remain there for 3 months until it separates and begins an extended stay. Part of that is some secondary missions, including the deployment of some ThinSats. What are these ThinSats that the Cygnus is going to be deploying?
So I'm glad you asked. The ThinSats are a really cool project. They're a secondary payload on Antares. They'll deploy after Cygnus has been deployed into the orbit. The ThinSats are they're student-led satellites. So they were created by students in 9 different states, actually, and they're going to allow kids to see things like a GPS position, temperature, and just get real telemetry data from space, which is really neat.
And that's an exciting time. Of course, it has the mission to the International Space Station to conduct first, and we'll expect that here on time in just under 12 minutes. At this time, Northrop Grumman has already conducted their go, no-go poll, and from the Northrop Grumman side, we are go.
Okay, I'm going to mute their audio and say the things I was trying to say. So what is particularly exciting about this launch is they're testing new things with their Cygnus technology, where they're going to go in for a dock at the International Space Station. And unlike with Dragon, it's not a self anything. They actually fly close, and then the Canada arm grabs the Cygnus cargo craft out of space and attaches it manually. So it's like zhwink, attach. But normally they leave these cargo capsules only attached to the ISS for a couple of weeks, and then they bring them back down. This time they're actually going to leave it attached for 90 days. And what they're doing is they're testing the ability to use these Cygnus capsules as a platform for doing science. It is hoped that in the future they will be able to launch these and have them be fly along, or rather fly alone, platforms for doing science, so that you don't have to always take your science to the International Space Station. Sometimes you just get the science done. Okay, so it looks like they're doing some interesting things. Let me get the volume back up for them.
Astro B. This is NASA's next generation of free-flying robots aboard the station. They're self-contained, cube-shaped robots and are designed to help scientists and engineers develop and test technologies for use in microgravity to assist astronauts with routine chores and give ground controllers additional eyes and ears on the space station. Now, these robots, powered by fans and vision-based navigation, perform crew monitoring, sampling, logistics management, and accommodate up to 3 investigations. They can be operated automatically or from the ground. Another investigation are manufacturing fiber optic cables in microgravity. This is called space fibers. This investigation will evaluate a method for producing fiber optic cable from a blend of zirconium, barium, lithium, sodium, and aluminum. This is called Z-bland in space. Z-bland produces glass 100 times more transparent than silica-based glass, exceptional for fiber optics. Microgravity suppresses 2 mechanisms that commonly degrade fiber, and previous studies showed improved properties in fiber drawn in microgravity compared to that fabricated on the ground. The Z-bland fiber is a unique candidate for improved imaging, remote sensing, and next-generation optical communications on Earth due to its low loss and higher bandwidth.
Enabled, voltage phenomenon, and commands are clear. Copy, like 1, check 397 and 398.
The bioanalyzer is another experiment from the Canadian Space Agency. This is an instrument that serves as a platform for scientific experiments where astronauts can easily test different body fluids such as blood, saliva, and urine and get returned key biomedical analyses within a few hours. Scientists will be able to use the bioanalyzer's data to accelerate science experiments. In the future, this type of device could help to keep a closer eye on astronauts' health. Another experiment is this image of David St. Jacques, and astronauts show accelerated arterial stiffening during their time in space. These are thicker artery walls and signs associated with the development of insulin resistance after spending 6 months in space. And these dramatic changes in the carotid artery aging was unrecognized until recently. So the vascular aging investigation, this investigation you're seeing here, will include critical onboard investigations to test the relationship among a crew member's metabolism, aging arteries, and aging bones. The results of this study could have great importance for assessing a newly identified risk for astronaut cardiovascular health, potentially pointing to mechanisms to reduce risk. And these are, again, just a few of the more than 3,400 pounds of science currently loaded on board Northrop Grumman's CRS-11 Cygnus vehicle, now under 7 minutes from launch.
So to answer the question about the Stratolaunch aircraft that will be dropping Pegasus rockets...
VZX is closed and OCCS is in automatic control mode.
The
Stratolaunch...
And a copy,
prop 1.
The Stratolaunch had its first flight this week, but while its original date for launching rockets was this year, 2019, due to delays in flying the plane, it is less clear when that's going to happen at this point. While doing some quick Googling, I was unable to find any current dates set. So I guess we're going to be watching and learning that one together. The idea of using an airplane to carry a rocket isn't new. In fact, many of the early suborbital flight tests that were done used this kind of drop a human strapped to a rocket from the belly of an airplane and watch out world, here they come. It hasn't been used since we got slightly calmer launch vehicles, I'm going to go with, for lack of a better phrase. But this is something that we are looking at for the future, and it is getting reinvented first by Virgin Galactic with their White Knight series of aircraft, and now Paul is also working on reinventing this way of doing it with his Stratolaunch airplane. So the video isn't actually paused. I had only turned off Oh, it does look paused, doesn't it? Okay, hold on. Reloading. Sorry, I may have hit the wrong thing.
LC, VTSO activation verified.
Getting the latest feed. Sorry. This is what I get for trying to science at you. Come on, you can do it. Whirly, 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 whirly. Load, NASA TV, load. It can do it. It can do it. I know it can do it. The page is loading. Thank you, Disillusioned. Here we go.
Before about 3 minutes 30 seconds prior to launch, we'll initiate auto-sequence handoff for terminal countdown.
Open FTS umbiloop and verify green indication.
I love how tiny this rocket is.
LC Ops 1, FTS umbiloop open and green.
Copy that, Ops 1.
LC Elect 2, FTLU, and FTS receive indications are nominal.
Copy Elect 2, we'll check 410. Ops 1, step 411, you go to send all arm command.
LC Ops 1, all arm commands sent.
They're working through
LC Elect 1, SNAs, ODMs, all armed.
They're working through
Elect 1.
checklists.
NASA TV, report range status.
Range is green.
Copy, range is green.
So the checklists that were originally developed for things like spaceflight have now been carried out to be used in medical procedures and many
LC
other
MES
things.
1, priming verified, MES 1.
Copy, priming verified, check 414. And launch team phase 3 dynamic limits will be active at T-minus 3 minutes.
They removed our countdown clock. I like having a countdown clock.
FC command into flight mode.
So at this point, they're working on making sure everything's ready
3
to
minutes
go.
before launch, we're now in the terminal
Auto
count
sequence
until
startup.
launch on time,
Copy, auto
3:46
sequence.
p.m. Central Time.
They're handing over power
ODM
and
bus
control.
voltages and currents are nominal.
Roger that, Elect 1. Nav, step 420, verify ready for nav mode.
LC nav, orb nav ready for nav mode.
Ops 2, step 421, switch to nav.
Orb nav to navigate.
LC nav, orb nav telemetry verified.
Copy that, nav. We'll check 422 complete.
So when they originally started developing the checklist system, people thought that it was lame. They thought that responsible human beings didn't need checklists. And now it's the standard across multiple different places. No longer do they trust human memories. They have realized that from medical sponges getting left in people's
And
guts
T-minus 2 minutes on my mark.
to all sorts of other errors, checklists are really the thing you need to trust in. And I do believe
Mark.
a bird just interrupted the transmission.
Now under 2 minutes for launch, everything's still looking good during this automatic countdown.
T-minus 30, T-minus 1 minute, 30 seconds on my mark. Mark.
I love the difference between this and a SpaceX cargo launch. They're both equally as important, but the production teams give them both such different flair. This is just your workaday rocket launch stream. It's comfortable, it's easy, we know what's going on, we have a beautiful seashore
And
view.
T-minus 1 minute on my mark.
But there's a whole lot less bling.
Mark.
Now under a minute to launch, in just about 10 seconds, then intakes will be pressurized. Everything's still on track for a liftoff on time.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 10. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have engine ignition.
And we have liftoff of the Antares NG-11 mission to the ISS. Engines at full power.
I love how you can see how it's
Attitude is
already
nominal.
drifting sideways.
Core pressurization looks good. Power systems look good.
And
Stable operation, full power, both engines. Core pressures look solid. Attitude is nominal. TVC is nominal. Power systems look good. Engines remain at full thrust, operating nominally.
Everything looking good during this first stage burn. It burns
Altitude
for
passes
3 minutes,
10,000
35
feet,
seconds.
Throttling back to 55% power. Attitude remains nominal. Nominal operation at 55% power. Throttling back up to full power. Engines are back to full power. TPC remains nominal. Attitude nominal, T plus 60 seconds. Altitude passes 25,000 feet. Pass through transonic. Attitude is nominal. Engines continue to operate at full power.
Everything looking good. About 10 more seconds
Pass
of this
through
first
max
stage
Q
burn.
with nominal attitude. Pass through 40,000 feet altitude. Engines remain nominal at full power. Fuel pressurization is nominal. VNG3 is on. Altitude past 60,000 feet. Engines remain nominal. Attitude and power systems all look good. Coming up on T plus 2 minutes. Engines continue to operate nominally at 100% power. TVC steering, power systems, attitude
2 minutes
all
into the
look good.
flight, 1 minute 30 seconds until this main engine
Altitude
cutoff.
passing through 100,000 feet. Power systems remain nominal. Attitude is good.
look at the
Engines continue to
structure.
operate at full power.
Look at the structure in the flames. That's shock waves moving through the flames.
Engines remain nominal. Power systems are good. Attitude is nominal. Core pressures look nominal. Approximately 1 minute till main engine cutoff. Engine power is nominal. Attitude is nominal. Avionics power is good. We're starting our slow throttle ramp for G limiting. 200,000 feet altitude as we approach T plus 3 minutes. Attitude remains nominal. 10,000 feet per second. Engines have throttled back to 55.
About 30 more seconds of this burn. Main engine will cut off. Stage 1 will separate, and the vehicle will coast for just...
Operation at 55% power is nominal. TVC slew for main engine cutoff has started. Attitude remains nominal. Engine operation continues to be nominal. Altitude 300,000 feet. And we have main engine cutoff. Attitude remains nominal post-shutdown. Stage 1 separation. ACS performance is nominal. Stage 2 ignition will be in approximately 30 seconds.
Crunchy launch pad.
Again, this is a coast period.
Antares is now coasting in preparation for Stage 2 ignition. Stage 1 Delta V was 17,348 feet per second. Altitude is 130 kilometers. Interstage SEP. Attitude remains nominal. TVC batteries initiated.
I'm so amused that they're not even giving us a computer rendering.
And we have Stage 2 ignition.
We just get to listen to basically a radio broadcast.
Attitude remains nominal. The Castor 30 XL motor will burn for approximately 2.5 minutes. Attitude is nominal. Motor pressure is nominal at approximately 100 psi. Power systems look good. Stage 2 TVC is nominal, and attitude remains nominal.
Everything looking good. The fairing has been separating. Cygnus is now revealed, and the inner stage at the back of the vehicle is separated before Stage 2 ignition.
Attitude remains nominal. Avionics power systems and temperatures all look good.
Again, this is solid rocket fuel. The entire thing will burn out over the course of 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Everything looking good so far.
You can't shut down a solid rocket booster.
Altitude is 170 kilometers. Power systems look good.
This is super low tech. It is a stick of dynamite. You light it,
Velocity is now 5 kilometers per second. Caster 30 burn continues. Motor pressure is 775 psi. Attitude remains nominal. All systems look good at this point. Avionics power looks nominal. Attitude's nominal. Just minor activity from the Stage 2 attitude control system during the motor burn. TVC is nominal. Power is good. Motor pressure is now approximately 685 psi. Velocity 6 kilometers per second. Attitude is nominal. Altitude is 200 kilometers. Stage 2 TVC looks good. Power is nominal. Motor pressure just entering its slow tail off, now dropping below 500 psi. TVC remains nominal. Power is good. 7 kilometers per second velocity. Attitude is nominal. Altitude is 205 kilometers.
Those graphics
and we
are
have
adorable.
Stage 2 motor burnout. We'll now coast for approximately 2 minutes prior to Cygnus spacecraft separation.
Second engine has burned out. The Cygnus vehicle traveling at just under 17,000 miles per hour.
Attitude is nominal. All systems look good. Second stage attitude control system is starting to reorient the vehicle for payload separation. Attitude remains nominal.
Loss of signal on motor cone and Stage 1.
All systems look good. We're just standing by for Cygnus spacecraft separation. Attitude remains nominal. Again, all systems look green at this point. Avionics, power systems, attitude all look nominal as we come up on mission time T plus 490 seconds. Vehicle is now oriented for spacecraft separation. Attitude is nominal.
Yeah, Gary, it looks like our telemetry is a little unusual here. I think we're showing a bit of a stale vehicle graphic here. At this point, we've got the Stage 2, the Castor 30 XL, with the Cygnus payload still attached, coasting and ready for deployment. So imagine that instead of what we're showing here.
Their graphic is hopefully the only thing that's wrong.
Attitude is good. Power systems look good.
Stopping that.
Sounds good. And just about 9 minutes after liftoff, we should be expecting Cygnus separation.
All systems nominal at this point.
I don't know where the ringing is coming from. It is on my end.
Attitude and power continue to look good.
Sorry.
And we have Cygnus spacecraft separation.
Somewhere I have a mail window open or something. That was Google Hangouts trying to do a voice call.
And
Sorry,
Terry
everyone.
is reorienting for the collision and contamination avoidance maneuver. Insertion orbit looks nominal. And Terry's mission is complete. Initial results all look nominal, and we're signing off from the LCC.
So I use enough different software that I can tell you they're using Wirecast based on the lower
Launch
third.
control reporting a good ascent of the Cygnus vehicle on top of the Antares rocket, carrying it on its 9-minute journey into an orbital insertion. 7,600 pounds of cargo inside will make its way to the International Space Station over the next day and a half, ready to rendezvous with the station Friday at 4:30 a.m. Central Time.
My local grocery store.
The avionics link.
A series of a few milestones before we get to that point. There'll be a series of a few burns over the next about 2 hours before we begin solar array deploy. These are the two Ultraflex solar arrays that are on the back of the Cygnus vehicle. Join us for our live coverage of that event at 6 p.m. Central Time tonight.
Go ahead, LC.
Yeah, let's go ahead into our post-launch checklist here. Step 40.
Northrop Grumman flight controllers you see here at the Mission Control Center in Dulles will be monitoring the vehicle over the next day and a half, overseeing all the milestones throughout its journey to the International Space Station. A good ascent of the Cygnus cargo vehicle and 7,600 pounds into orbit. Again, we'll be back on in just about 2 hours. 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern, for our coverage of the solar array deploy.
Ops 1.
Yeah,
we'll conclude coverage and then come back for a capture on Friday, April 19th, scheduled for 4:30 a.m. Central Time. Again, Ann McLean aboard the International Space Station will be the prime robotics operator to grab that vehicle using the station's robotic arm to feed St. John, backing her up, and Nick Hague monitoring telemetry.
So
a good ascent of Cygnus into orbit over a 9-minute journey. Again, we'll be back in the next 2 hours. This is Mission Control Houston.
So they are coming back in 2 hours in order to share the deployment of the solar panels on the Cygnus. Now, I'm not sure we're going to bring that to you live. It is not the most exciting thing in the world, but anything is possible. So stay tuned. It may be that we have that up in one window and I'm working on something else in another. I just don't know yet. So I apologize for the multiple phone calls. I'm not quite sure why my local grocery store was so determined to call me. I'm going to go find out. And I'm going to thank all of you for being here today with me as we watched a rocket launch together. You have been tuned in to CosmoQuest X right here on twitch.tv. We are your place to learn and do science. We are a production of the Planetary Science Institute working in collaboration with Youngstown State University. We are brought to you by you. Thank you so much to all of you who have supported us through Patreon, who have given us subscriptions and bits, and who have donated to us through Streamlabs. You allow me to make payroll for Annie, and we're still working on making next month's payroll. So please help me be able to pay her all the hours that she puts in to this channel. And thank you guys for being here and loving science and bringing your questions and bringing your knowledge and bringing your occasional sarcasm and always awesomeness. So we will see you on the other side. I am now going to try and figure out exactly who we should raid. If you have any opinions, please state them now. I believe that DOS is currently streaming Kerbal. I also like to raid smaller streams if you have any ideas. So I see a recommendation coming in. Oh, Nicandria is live. Okay, let's raid Nicandria. So I'm going to get that going, and she is one of our awesome science streamers right here on Twitch, and she is part of the Knowledge Fellowship. So I'm going to run the credits. We're going to stream. Give her a fabulous lit up with rockets welcome from the CosmoQuest community. So I will see you all on the other side. Bye-bye.